Mic check.
We can hear you, or I can.
Yay.
Loud and clear.
Andre, do you need to go to another meeting, or do you want to switch it over to me?
I can give you permissions as host just in case I do have to go since I'm
Okay.
working, but right now I'll put you as host really quick.
Okay.
Just one quick question. Will I be able to share my screen?
Yeah, I can give you permissions. I'll make you co-host too.
Okay, this is Amy.
Okay, can you hear me, Christian?
Yes.
And hey, this is Renee. I'll need to share my screen too when it's my turn on the agenda. Can y'all hear me? No? Okay. Yes, you can? Nobody's answering me.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank you.
I was shaking my head, yes.
Yeah, I'll
Okay.
try to make you co-host as well. 1 second.
So is this better if I use the mic?
Yes.
Okay, great. Nobody else is here, but so I wasn't going to use my headset, but I'm sure it sounds better.
Thanks
So-
for joining us today.
Sorry?
Thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Thank you. Sorry, my text, I just hit a bit of traffic and I didn't know how long it was going to last. So I wanted to make sure if I was running a few minutes late, you knew I was still popping in.
So, for those that want to share your screen, it will not let me put you as host, only Christian. Is there any way you guys can email what you have to Christian and he can let you share it, or I can?
All right. Am I a host? There should be a way I could give
Yeah, you
everyone
should be able to-
rights.
Yes, you are host. That's why. Yep.
Okay, let me give everyone rights and be done with this.
Yeah, you should be able to right click on share screen and give it to multiple people.
There we go. Mute, allow attendees to, Oh, okay, share screen. Nope, that's not my share screen.
I think you right click on it, Christian.
Right click on shared screen.
Yeah. Or click on the little arrow next to it.
Ooh, look at that. Maybe that's what I did. Yeah, I had to figure this out not too long. There you go. All panelists can share. Who can start sharing when someone else is sharing? All panelists, you can write each other over. There you go. You're in
Thank you.
business. Thank you, Renee.
The things we never thought we'd have to learn that we learned in pandemic affected years.
Well, I have a policy I started 31 years ago of not being proficient in any technology, because if you become proficient, then people come to you instead of learning. And then I became the go. So all you people who were old, you remember Harvard graphics back in the day? Well, I was the only one coming out of college that knew Harvard graphics. And I spent 6 months doing nothing but creating graphs for the city manager in 1989. And after about 6 months, I realized if I don't get out of this, I will never stop making graphs for this person. So after that, I don't know software packages. And if I do, I won't tell you.
Well, the funny thing is most people assume that we don't know technology because we are older. So it works in our favor. Yeah, it does.
Okay, good. Well, good evening, everybody. We have a good representation from our subcommittee members. Let's go ahead and get started. Commissioner Russell, do you want to go ahead and get started?
Yes, thank you. Good to see everyone. And it was good to see folks face to face last time we met, actually our first meeting of the full commission face to face this year. So it was wonderful to see you all. We do have a packed agenda, and so we are going to go ahead and get started. In fact, I can place the agenda in the chat, but I would like for us just to think about a word or two that describes kind of how you're feeling in the moment. Here we are in the summer. We are midway through the work that we're doing, not only as a subcommittee, but as a full commission. So just kind of think about, what word kind of describes your state of mind at this very moment. And once you have that word, you can throw that in the chat. We would love to see where everyone is in the moment. We have grateful, wondering, pensive, and anxious so far. Anxious. I would love to see as we go forward in our meeting today, you're going to say anxious too. So there's some anxiety. So let's make sure that we at some point circle back to see where some of this anxiety is coming from and how we might be able to support each other. It's meaningful to kind of see where we are and see where our headspace is. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and move us through. I put the agenda in the chat so that you can see where we're going, and we are just about right on time. Commissioner Pascal has an icebreaker, and then you can see the remaining items for our agenda, which is fairly tight. So we're going to go ahead and get moving. Thank you all for participating in that.
Thank you, Commissioner Russell. So I wanted to do a quick icebreaker. Please, if you want to share with us, either by raising, by speaking on Zoom or in the chat, what was the last country that you visited outside the US? Let's share that, hopefully, with hopes that we're going to be able to travel again abroad. But what was the last country that you visited outside the US? Oh, so we have Estonia. That's Renee. Yeah, Estonia, France. Karen visited France last, as well as Christian. They both were in France. Jose and Vena visited Mexico, and Amy visited England. I'm gonna put. As for me, I put Italy was the last country that I visited. Anybody else want to share where the last country they visited?
Yeah, I visited Tobago. And it's a girls' trip, and they just opened their borders to be able to travel again. I don't know if we're going to be able to make it this summer, but it was such a meaningful trip for me.
Okay, wonderful. Hopefully, we can all do a trip to, to a favorite destination so we can ease our anxiety. And I'm surprised to hear anxiety, because you would think that with people going out and being out there, more social, more in a more normal day to day, that people would feel maybe happier, but I think there's still some anxiety and trepidation about, everything around us. So it's important to acknowledge that. So anyway, well, thank you for responding to that question. And we have a guest speaker this evening. She was at our meeting 2 weeks ago when we met as a full committee. And it's my pleasure to introduce you to Renee Aring. She is the Executive Director of the Brookhaven Convention and Visitors Bureau. And she leads Explore Brookhaven. And they did a survey a couple of years ago that provided some pretty useful insights into Brookhaven. So I wanted her to share her survey results with us because I think it's going to be of use to our committee. So Renee, please. Thank you for being here.
I think you're on mute.
Okay, that is going to be the saying that we never get rid of, right? We're going to say that for the rest of our lives. I'm so sorry. Christian asked if I would share the brand strategy process that we did in 2019. Just to give a background, we were a brand new organization. We had not come up with anything yet. We felt very grateful, to someone else's term, to have the opportunity to truly build a brand for Brookhaven from scratch, not to come in and make something up or fix somebody else's something. And the process basically was that we, so give you a little background on the organization. The city, of course, was created in December of 2012, and they actually created the Convention and Visitors Bureau. The bylaws were written in 2015. The Board of Trustees were appointed in March of 2018. I began in November of 2018, and we moved into our offices in town Brookhaven in 2020. What we didn't have in our hands, what the city of Brookhaven looked like from a hotel perspective. So we created a report that comes in to us every month that shows by hotel what their occupancy is, what their average daily rate is, what their overall revenue is. So it gives the city a good idea of how to track the occupancy taxes that they collect from the hotels, that are divided up in several ways, but a portion of that is state mandated to come to the marketing arm, which is Explore Brookhaven. So that kind of gave us an idea of who we were. So we have several properties up around the perimeter and several around down by 85. And so one right on Peachtree, an extended stay property that's there. And then we launched a symposium. I think Aisa was at that symposium, were you not?
Yes, I was. I remember one of the
Yes,
hotels.
yes,
Yes. Mhm.
Yes. So we launched a symposium just using mailing lists that we gathered from all over, from homeowners associations and residents and leaders of the community and city officials, of course. And we had about 60 or 70 at the symposium. The whole process was led basically asking, what do you think about Brookhaven? When you think of Brookhaven, what do you think? And we got out of all of the symposium and all of the email surveys that we did and one-on-one surveys, we got more than 700 interviews. And this is really what came up for everyone. I'm gonna minimize this. Okay, sorry, it was kind of blocking my screen. But the largest of the word map was a genuine sense of belonging, which just resonated from people that had been to Brookhaven, people that had heard about Brookhaven, people that didn't even know about Brookhaven. And that came out a lot. Our outdoor spaces, our culinary adventures, our locally owned chef-driven restaurants, and this genuine sense of belonging. And so from that, we were able to work with our board and our brand strategists on creating what our brand experience is about, what distinguishes our products and services, and what our superior value is to our customers. And what we know as our brand experience is that we bring people together and create a genuine sense of belonging. That's Explore Brookhaven's role. What distinguishes us is that we're easy to enjoy, our neighborhood experiences, and our family-friendly community. And our superior value is that we're welcoming, approachable, relaxing, and beautiful. And you're a guest in Brookhaven, whether it's a day or forever. And that was very purposeful about including all of the residents as a guest, because what we learned is that so many of our residents would dine and shop only in their neighborhoods and not venture out into the other neighborhoods of the community. So they may live in Murphy Candler, but they may not go down to Dresden Drive, kind of thing. So we felt that it was our responsibility to give a visual understanding of which locations were actually in Brookhaven, and share that with our communities, whether they were residents or our visitors. So basically, we created a mission that we enhance the image and perception and success for tourism activities and economic opportunity in the city of Brookhaven. Our vision is to provide professional tourism leadership and expertise for the Brookhaven destination. And our destination brand, or promise, excuse me, is we bring people together. I can't read it again. Hold on a second. And create a genuine sense of belonging. We're welcoming, approachable, relaxing, and beautiful. It's easy to enjoy our neighborhood experiences and family-friendly community. You're a guest in Brookhaven for a day or forever. And that we live by that every day. So I talked a little bit about the neighborhood. So this is the first ever map of Brookhaven. I don't know if you can see this, but I'm happy to share an actual map with all of you, or it's on our website on explorebrookhaven.com in the bottom footer. But Murphy Candler and Blackburn, Town Brookhaven, Buford Highway, Dresden, those were what really resonated as the principal live, work, play, and stay areas of Brookhaven. I know there are a lot more neighborhoods, but if there's not an opportunity for a guest that doesn't live here to experience that neighborhood, then it really wasn't relevant for our marketing purposes. So we have a little breakdown on all of the neighborhoods on the map as well. And then we were able to take all of this and build a brand identity. So we went all around about, are we Explore Brookhaven? Are we Brookhaven Destination? Are we Visit Brookhaven? And decided that because the city was so new, that Explore would apply both to our residents and to our guests. And if you notice, the fabric, as we call it, to the left-hand side of the stacked logo is the general shape of Brookhaven. And that the fabric represents all of our outdoor spaces, our ability to enjoy water, Peachtree Creek Greenway, and the parks. And then these are a couple of versions of our logo. So the horizontal logo is our primary, but we do need to use the stacked periodically, especially in social media and some other areas where you're limited to the space. But belong here is what really resonated as our tagline. And I think that's the part that Christian really wanted me to share with all of you. Sorry. I wanted to make sure there wasn't a hand up or something. I saw something go up. Okay. So those are our primary logos. And then these are our social posts, social channels and our website. And it's kind of broken into the experiences that Brookhaven offers, dine, stay, shop, discover, and our most recent addition is gather. So we've just started working on getting groups to choose Brookhaven as a destination. Last year was kind of a lost year, so we didn't get to launch that, but we are working on that now. And we have 2 sales associates that are working with us to help build that brand for us. This is an example of one of our ads that may have run in Hoffman Media, if anybody subscribes to that. It's run in several print publications. Not recently, unfortunately, because our revenue was so affected, we've cut all print advertising, but this is a good example of one of the ads that we've run. And then we have a team we are four on the team. Well, I didn't even put myself on there. That's hilarious. But I have a director of marketing, digital media and design coordinator, a department coordinator, and then we have group and leisure sales partners that are just coming on board. We opened our offices, like I said, in May of last year. So we serve as a welcome center in town Brookhaven, as well as our offices. This is what it looks like, or before we moved in anyway. And I just wanted to share with y'all today the belong here as the tagline. I know that is something that Christian wanted the committee and the commission to know about. So there you go. Okay, there, got you back up on the screen. So Asa, I don't know if you wanted to open it up for questions or discussion, or I was trying to, look, I'm 8 minutes, not bad. That's not bad. You
That's
gave me
great.
10.
Thank you,
Was I
Renee.
talking real fast?
No, not that fast. Thank you for sharing that information. So I wanted to ask you something. When people are tourists in Brookhaven, are they business tourists? Are they leisure tourists? Are they from Georgia? Are they from outside? Are they from Atlanta? Who are the tourists of Brookhaven?
So in 2019, we did some great research as well, thank goodness. So we have a good baseline of what we think will return to the area. We don't know after last year, but for 2018, so we did research in 19, basically for 2018. And the general picture is during the week, we have a lot of corporate transient business, people that stay in Brookhaven because whoever they're calling on, it's a good hub and spoke place for them to stay in Brookhaven, and they're not in the middle of the downtown area, or even Buckhead. For some people prefer to stay out in Brookhaven. We had leisure travel on the weekends, and then we had a lot of group business that would transcend both. And so the group and the corporate business has not really started coming back yet. We've seen some corporate transient, but not nearly what we used to have. Our average daily rate in 2019 was about 140 during the week and 120 on the weekends. And Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday, we ran better than 80% occupied, which means we're full. I mean, that's not a whole lot of room to, in the hotel world, that's considered full, let me just say, because they have to flip the rooms and all of that. So we were originally working at trying to fill some gaps, like lift the rate on the weekends, have people stay Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or maybe into Monday to help the hotels lift that rate through. There are some specific niche markets that would do that, some social groups that would meet kind of stuff. So now we're just starting from scratch and going to see who's interested. So it's a little bit different. So we'll see. The traveler last year was very non-traditional, like clothes in garbage bags, not in suitcases. Didn't follow rules, very disruptive, a lot of marijuana smoking in the hotels. It was a very different clientele last year. So we're happy to start seeing that change back a little bit.
Okay, so anybody have any questions for Renee?
I have a question. I have two questions. First question is, you mentioned you did interviews of 700. So can you give us some perspective on the composition? Who was that? Where did they come from? How'd you get to them?
Sure.
Detail there.
So that we're at the symposium, we're all either lived or worked in Brookhaven, right? Then we knew them through interactions, either personally with myself or through city leadership or something. So the invitation.
I don't know if that's my.
Hi.
I'm sorry. I don't know if that's my internet connection.
Sorry.
I think we missed you, Renee. I think you were gone for a few seconds. If you can repeat again, because you were gone, Renee. She might be gone for good now. Hold on. Renee?
Yes, sorry. I have
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if
bars.
you can repeat, start your answer again, because I think we missed you after the 700 interviews. Oh, she's breaking up again.
Okay, well, maybe we can just get an,
Am I back?
Yes, you're back.
Am I back?
Yes, you are. You are.
Okay, sorry, I just rebooted the internet. Okay, all right, so we did the 70 or so that came to the symposium were all vetted through myself, the brand strategist, city leadership. About 200 invitations were sent out for that. So those that didn't come to the symposium were also sent a survey. And then we hired a company that does research with people that travel frequently, a minimum of 2 or 3 times a year. And they did surveys for us, about 500 or so, through that connection. So we were really surprised at how many people knew where Brookhaven was. Even though it's a relatively young city, and how many people who had actually been here before. And then we also state of Georgia in 2018. So just to get an idea of, were they familiar with Brookhaven? Did they have an opinion of Brookhaven? And from all of those, there was probably 1,500 or so total that we surveyed or interviewed, and 700 total participated.
and I'm
It's a
sorry,
good number.
one last question. The move from explore, or I don't know if it's a move, but explore to belong, or using those interchangeably, I'm not sure. Is that targeted primarily toward guests? Is that still your audience, or are you trying to target residents as well? Because I see the words explore and belong very differently.
So the Explore Brookhaven is really kind of our call to action. Instead of calling ourselves the Convention and Visitors Bureau, because that sounds like we're the FBI and we're here to help you, we do the Explore Brookhaven as our organizational name. So it's a call to action every time we sign an email, every time somebody goes to the website. The belong here is the tagline that we use, and we don't use that on every promotion that we do. It depends on the audiences. And so typically, yes, it would be more to those who did not live here, but we have had conversations about how important it is currently for that to be used in more of more of our voice.
Okay. So Renee, we have some questions here that have come in the chat regarding the actual demographic composition of the people who were surveyed, whether all voices were included. So what composition do we have any regarding age or race or ethnicity?
No,
what
we
part
did
of the
not
city
ask
they're
those
from?
questions.
Okay. Okay.
Well, we had representatives from all neighborhoods at the symposium. I mean, Buford Highway was represented. I mean, there were all neighborhoods were represented. So, but the surveys that went out through the.
Hello. Oh, I think we lost you again.
Yeah, I'm trying.
We lost you again. Sorry. Okay. Okay.
Okay.
Okay.
But the surveys that went out through the company that we hired to do that, that they did not ask those questions.
Okay.
I can tell you from the room that you were in the room, Isa.
Yes.
We had a very good cross section of ethnicities, race, gender. I don't know that I could go into sexual orientation. That I'm not good at that, but because again, it wasn't a question we asked.
Okay. Okay.
But
So
I do know that the reputation Brookhaven has, like online, is that we're a very welcoming community, especially to the LGBTQ traveler. So.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you. And we have a comment here from Karen. Karen, do you want to share your comment about the Linwood Park and the map, Karen?
It looked like the legend on the map is over where historic Linwood Park is. And it might be good if we could relocate that legend so that we could highlight historic Linwood Park, since that is the oldest African-American neighborhood in DeKalb County. And
Okay.
have some.
Great offer, thank you.
That's a good
Yeah.
idea,
Yeah.
because the council had not officially passed the historic district resolution at
Okay.
the time the map was created.
That's right. Mhm.
Next version, let's go ahead and do that.
Absolutely. It's maps, websites, they're ever changing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
so.
Okay. Okay, so do we have any more questions for Renee? About the process or the results or the participants? Or
So I'm kind of interested, this is just a general question for everybody. Notwithstanding a very good question about, what was the makeup, neighborhood representation, demographic representation, notwithstanding that, do you all feel in general that 700 people weighing in on this type of exercise is a good number, insufficient? I'm just curious what your all thoughts are on that.
I think the number doesn't say much because the number just says the number of individuals surveyed. It would have to be, how do you reach out to these people? Were they all like, interviews or surveys or focus groups or town halls? What was the format of this? What was the way that you got this information from? The languages, were they just in English or in Spanish? Were they people, people who could read and write?
Let's assume all those boxes were checked. Would 700 be a number? I'm not going to hold this against it, but I'm curious.
I can answer that for you, Christian. So for a survey or interviews or whatever to be statistically accurate, it has to be more than 400. So that's the magic number.
Because of Brookhaven's population?
No, in general. No, that's
okay.
In general.
Okay.
That's just a general.
I only asked that because my sense is a recommendation might be coming out of the subcommittee to redo the vision and mission and make it, community-wide with huge impact or a huge input. And I'm just curious what huge input would mean, because you're right. I could go find a PhD out there that would say, if you got 42.23 people representing these 7 zip codes or neighborhoods with this particular demographic, you're there. Or I could say, I got 400 and I tried to do this, and this. So I'm just curious. I'm not a statistician. I'm not a survey person, but based on a city this size, 400 is a lot. 700 is huge. Now that doesn't get into who were the 700. That's a whole.
Yeah, and even the level of it, things like level of education, income level, was, I don't know, was his target geared more towards a higher income level or a lower, were all income levels? Again, Renee said this information wasn't captured, but was it a cross section of the city?
Exactly.
I would presume.
And I would argue that in any city, everywhere I've been, the types of voices you want to hear, getting them at the table outside of dragging them out of their apartment and coming to a meeting with a warrant is very, very difficult. So it'll be interesting to see if a recommendation coming out of the subcommittee is to redo the vision, and the vision having extensive public input, what would be the acceptable level? Because every planning process I've ever been involved in, anywhere I've worked, there's always been a small group of people saying, it was not representative, I wasn't contacted. And it doesn't matter if it's a transportation issue, a park issue, or something as big and strategic as a vision and mission. There'll always be somebody at the end saying, I wasn't contacted. Or my voice or my people's voice wasn't heard. So I'm just curious, that's all.
Yeah, and I think that it's in the attempt, it's in how we are transparent and how we are doing the outreach and and collecting the demographic data, because then we could use that demographic data and say, well, out of the X amount, out of this number, this N of residents who live in Brookhaven, here are the demographics. And so what we were able to capture with the survey, they line up or they don't line up. And so we can't make assumptions because the data wasn't collected in that way. So I don't know if that's, but as we are, thinking about if there are future surveys to be sent out, knowing that N, that number is statistically important. So even if the respondents are small, if it's representative of the community, then it could be statistically significant.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, Tiffany. I think this would be a great opportunity for both, you know, this committee and more particularly Brookhaven to employ, you know, DEI principles, right? Like this could be one of those opportunities that says, you know, we as a commission learned a lot. And one of the things we learned in terms of communicating with our community is how we do that in a way that employs is diverse, represents diversity of the community, is inclusive. And then that's everything from how we go about it to the languages to who's included and so forth. So and you know, we could spend some time talking about that at a different time, how we could accomplish that.
Okay.
I would
Okay.
like to add one thing if you don't mind, because
Yes, go
just
ahead.
so that you know that this was not a branding opportunity for the city. This was a branding opportunity for marketing to travelers. And travelers typically are higher educated, higher income, with the ability to move around more so than some of the residents of Brookhaven would represent. So you can certainly make that assumption, because I do have that information on who travels here, and what their household income is and all of that. And so they are a higher level of education, higher level of income.
And I guess the question then would be for you all to explore is if this is who typically travels to Brookhaven, who would you like to travel to Brookhaven, right? Because there are presumptions around certain demographics and how much they travel and how much they spend to travel, that may surprise you. And so is there opportunity to market to communities that you historically have not marketed to that would present unique opportunities to Brookhaven?
Sure.
You know, I think you're all on a very, very good thread that I'm hoping our co-chairs are taking some really good notes on this particular one, because I think this is a good area to explore in your all's write-up of something the city needs to think about, because I don't think of it. I've been on 2 different CVB boards in my career, and none of them have asked that question that succinctly. You know, who are we trying to attract? It's typically, how do we fill up our hotels? Now, I'm sorry, Renee, but that's been my experience on CVB boards, because CVB boards are made up of operators and they want their hotels filled. And I'm cool with that. That was kind of the old way of thinking. In Brookhaven, we do have a little bit more nuance, and correct me if I'm wrong, Renee, we kind of like to book ourselves, at least locally and regionally, as a restaurant foodie town. So we are looking for people who would spend money in our restaurants, because we don't have a lot of great hotels. I mean, it isn't like we're going to market the Microtel and the Motel 6, super, you know. But I think that's a very good question that the city needs to ask itself, knowing that the board of the CVB is appointed by the city council.
Okay, great. Okay, well,
Add, if I'm, I would agree. I would just echo Tiffany and Kim's comments. And the other thing I hear you about the brand, the marketing was targeted toward guests, but the persona of Brookhaven has to be true for all who either enter and or live. So if the persona is, and we're saying we want you to belong, but that's not true of how we market to and or treat our citizens, but it's how we treat our guests. Those are two different pieces. So I would just say we need to ask ourselves that question as well. Are we one brand, and are we true to that brand to all audiences, although it may be nuanced, or we may reach an audience in a certain way if they're guests versus if they're residents. But if we want you to explore and you're a resident, is that the same truth for guests, and vice versa? If you belong, do you belong here as a resident, and do you belong here as a guest?
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Amy, for that concluding comments. We have to move on in the agenda, but this has been a great conversation. Renee, thank you so much for being here and for sharing those insights and that data. I think it's going to be very useful as we put together our recommendations, and I appreciate that you took the time to share the work that you've done with Explore Brookhaven. So thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you. No, I just realized that my name is your name because I came in on
Yes,
your link. That's so
exactly.
funny.
I saw that there were
That's
two of
funny.
me. Yes.
Yeah, that's confusing.
So I went
Thank y'all
to
very much
I
for
went to
your time.
Estonia. I went to Estonia. Yes. Anyway,
So, yeah.
thank you, Renee.
Bye.
Bye. So really quickly, 2 weeks ago, again, when we met in person, I had the pleasure of meeting our fellow subcommittee member, Amy Korn. She has her own strategic communications firm, and she was telling me and Commissioner Russell that she's done a lot of work on mission and vision for her clients. So we talked to her afterwards, and she shared some really interesting thoughts about process, how the process to do all this should go about. So we wanted her to share a little bit, just a little tidbit. You can share like 5 minutes because we're running out of time, but you're spending more time in the next meeting. So this is just like a little test, a little taste of what we're going to be experiencing next month. But I wanted her, Amy, to tell us a little bit about her, share a little bit of her expertise and what we should be doing in the processes for this, in this committee.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. So you already heard a lot about brand, so I'm gonna skip forward here and let me maximize my screen so you can hear it or see it. So the thing that I would encourage you as we think about mission and vision, and everything you're going to see in these samples is really targeted at corporations. So when we think about organizations, you can also apply this to individuals if you're thinking about your individual brand. But there's a current state that we live in. And over the past year, in particular, the past 18 months, that has changed to some type of near-term status that the city of Brookhaven is in. So as you think about the mission and vision, and what our recommendation will be back to the city is, what is that aspirational state? So I'm gonna skip over a couple slides, so just bear with me real quick because we're going fast. So one of the things that Commissioner Russell and Pascal and I talked about is how we typically look at a vision and mission. And for the most part, when we look at a vision and mission, we think about it very hierarchical. We have these functions, these capabilities, we're trying to deliver on objectives that align to a mission and vision. But what I want you to think about before our next meeting, I'm gonna also kind of leave you with some thoughts and homework, is how do you think about a vision and mission more holistically? And so that vision and mission should align with who we are, our personality, our identity, our essence, as well as why. What purpose do we serve? And so I want you to think about the vision and mission, again, not just hierarchical, but also more holistically. And with that said, some of what we're going to be doing from a process perspective when we meet next is go through an exercise that I call the Rubik's Cube. And so again, this is a more holistic approach of thinking about our brand, our mission and vision more holistically in terms of multidimensional. So just like human beings, we're each multidimensional. We have various aspects of who we are. So does a city such as Brookhaven. And as we think about that mission and vision, what we're going to do is think about each of these dimensions of the city of Brookhaven in both a current state, where we are today, and an aspirational state. And in doing so, that will allow us to organize some of the thoughts we have around all the research that you've already done as commissioners over the last several months. In your research around what the mission and vision says today for the city of Brookhaven, when you looked at mission and vision statements for cities that you like to travel to or your home state, but also aspirationally as part of this commission where you want us to be. So once we go through that exercise around the Rubik's Cube, then we'll align those attributes, again, of where we think the current state is versus a proposed or a suggested state of mission and vision. And we'll also then, I'll give you a very simple, and this is used pretty frequently in the marketing and communications community. This is not a mission and vision statement, but it allows you to think of conceptually how we would put these words into play. So that's just a preview of a process that we'll go through. And I know that was really quick, so I will stop there and see if there are any questions. But if you can think of anything else, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second here. What I want you to think about is the Rubik's Cube, okay, of Brookhaven. Again, we're multidimensional, we're complex, we have lots of different attributes. And so where are we today? Where do we want to be in an aspirational state? And then that will lead us to organizing some of our thoughts about our recommendations back to the city. Did I do that in 5 minutes or less?
This was fantastic. Thank you so much. I really looking forward to this, more workshop type of meeting that we might have this discussion of the Rubik's Cube, but this gives us a lens through which to look at this process and see what's important. But I love the Rubik's Cube analogy. But thank you. So, and I'm glad that you're able to share your expertise with our group. We didn't realize early on in the process that we had an expert in mission and vision right in our group. So thank you, Amy. So let's move along. We have about 16 minutes left, and this is obviously, we'll probably just start the discussion, but we want to talk about the city charter. It's a huge, voluminous document. It includes everything from elections, who can run for office, motor vehicles, sewers, finances, courts and jails, police, nuisances, fire prevention, land use, all that. So I don't intend to go through the whole document, but if you were able to look at parts of that document and see, the way this is written or the intention behind this, is blocking access or opportunity for some people. Is this a document that allows for equitable opportunity for everybody who lives and or works in the city? So with that, if anybody would like to start the discussion about this, we have an expert on city charters here, who's Christian. He's an expert on the charter, and so if you have any questions about the actual charter, you may ask Christian. But if anybody has any, was there anything that you saw in any particular section in any of these, 27 chapters that struck you as, this is not fair, this is not equitable, this is really restricting access to people participating in the civic life of the city?
If I could add, I think Karen asked a very good question of, who runs the elections for the city. And all of the municipalities rely on the county to do that. It's not uncommon across the country. Boards of elections are typically a county function. And because there's always typically a county or state issue up anytime there's a city person up, there is a discussion within the city government, and I use that word specifically because that's made up of the professional staff such as myself and the electeds, is how is the city of Brookhaven going to respond to what the state of Georgia has done on election reform? Are we going to do anything different? Meaning, and I'll just give an example. Are we willing to budget in our budget this fall extra overtime, or just overtime in general, to provide 24/7 security for a drop box? Because the new law says you have to have that. Last election, we just had it bolted in the parking lot with a camera on it. That seemed to work. But now the new law says it has to be monitored 24/7 by a live body. Are we willing as a city to pay for that? Now, I hope DeKalb County pays for it, but if they're not willing to, are we willing to? Same with voting hours, early voting hours, those types of things. City of Brookhaven's posture since I've been here for 5 years is we'll take as many early voting locations as DeKalb County is willing to staff. We give up our rec centers, please come here. Let's make it easy for our residents to vote. And I think that's kind of the posture of the city council then and now. But the changes at the state level have changed. What do we want to do? Will we do anything different as a community to counteract what the state has done? And that's a big policy decision for the council and the mayor. But for me as city manager, I'm going to need direction from them. What do I include in the budget this fall? Do I include the overtime? Do I include janitorial services so we can keep the city hall open 24 hours a day for early voting? Those types of things. In many cases, it's going to be up to the local governments to say, what am I willing to spend to help DeKalb County? Because they're not going to spend the money.
I think Karen had.
I've gone through a couple of sections, and I think the two things that stood out to me that I wanted to just bring up to our group. In Chapter 2, Article 4, it talks about boards and commissions and authorities. And board members are appointed by the mayor, but there's no language in there that talks about how do we increase a diverse pool of potential candidates for the mayor to consider. And so I just wanted to advance that as something that perhaps we should discuss. And then also there's talk about training in section 2.94. There's no mention of any anti-racism training. And I was wondering if that is something that should or could be available or mandated for all board members. Along that same vein, there's section 2.378 that talks about appointment of hearing officers, names drawn from a hat pulled from 5 qualified attorneys. But there's no structure around that about how that list of 5 qualified attorneys is assembled. Are we working to make sure that that is representative and inclusive? Those were the two things that kind of hit me. The other thing I'll mention just to throw out is Article 9, 4-900, talks about the lawful presence of persons under 21. And it talks about, I wondered if we should re-include the locations that are included in that so that we could view it from a lens of communities of color to see if we have made an arbitrary determination of what a family-oriented style venue is, and if we should go back and look at that through a lens of inclusion. Those were the things that just stood out to me.
That is all good stuff. That is good stuff, because what you're seeing, especially that hearing officers, that's just holdover charter stuff that's been around for decades. And you probably see that exact language in 400 cities across Georgia. But that's a good read, Karen. And that's the type of lens I was hoping you all would get to when you were looking through it. I'm hoping none of you saw any his or her stuff in there.
No, but I had one thing to add, and Karen, great job and thank you. I was going to ask the question about training. I wasn't able to get through in as much detail as you, but I did have more of a question than a comment because I was not able to read it in totality. Around chapter 14, the land development and subdivisions. Is there any language, Christian, in there around gentrification? And again, protecting, historical communities.
So yeah, you all have covered, actually broached 2 topics. So I want to kind of back out of the charter for just a second to kind of talk about the different governing documents. So the view of the charter, you have charter, you have ordinances, you have resolutions, you have processes and procedures, and then practice, okay? So you wouldn't put in the charter your annual list of training required by employees, the specific training. You would put in the charter, employees will be trained on the following topics in general terms. So same with land use. The zoning code is out there, and it has all the gory detail, and the planning documents, the comprehensive plan, which is called for in the charter, has things like historic district, affordable housing, that kind. I don't think they use the word gentrification, but those types of protections. Now, I'll let the community decide if the protections are enough. But the vehicle to put those types of protections in there is in the zoning code, not in the charter, if that makes sense. So the charter is almost like the US Constitution, but then you have the US code and the actual legislation that enacts that. So as you're asking very good questions. So if you wanted to go those route, you would want things in the charter that talks about, you want to have this, it's almost, you got the vision, mission, then charter, then ordinances and resolutions. An ordinance has more force of law than a resolution does. And then even after that, you have motions, but that's a whole different area. So I just wanted to point that out so we don't get too far. It's like putting the rules of saluting a general in the US Constitution. You wouldn't do it there, you do it in another place. So yes, all good questions, but you can mention those in your report, but charter might not be the right vehicle for it, if that helps.
Thank you.
So any other sections of the charter that stand out for us?
I'll pose one just to be provocative. Before I got here, there was nothing in the charter that said the city manager had to live in the city. So now the charter does, they put it in there. I think it's a good idea, but at the same point, when you live in a very wealthy community, it can be hard to attract candidates if they have to live in the city. So many very well-off communities, they don't require that. So at this stage, the only people that have to live in the city to be either representing Brookhaven or working for Brookhaven is the mayor, the council, and me. And certain boards of commissioners, like the planning commission, but some things you don't have to live in the city, like Renee's board, which I'm on, the Convention and Visitors Bureau. You don't have to live in the city because you can represent an institution in the city, like a hotel. So things in the charter saying who should be represented, do they have to live in the city? I think it's a valid question. I don't have an opinion either way officially as the city manager, but as far as your inquiry, I think it's a worthwhile question. I mean, if you were a little city, would you limit, and we're not a little city, but if you were a little city, would you limit eligibility to serve on certain boards and commissions to a city resident if you couldn't get qualified residents? I don't know.
And Christian, I have a question about the districts. There's 4 districts in the city, and there's a map there that's as an addendum to the charter. Are those districts every years when we get the census numbers? Are they
Yes.
Are we doing them every year? So what is the criteria for?
Every 10 years, and they were just approved about a month ago by the city council based on the draft results of the 2020 census. And once the final results of the census come out, if they're materially different from the draft, we'll redo it again.
But isn't there like a state commission or something that determines?
No, we could rely on the state to do it, and some smaller cities do. It's I believe it's legislative services with the state general assembly. They have a function that's all they do, and there are 500 cities and 100 something counties and school districts have to do it too. So there's 1,000 entities in Georgia that will be descending upon the Department of Legislative Services redoing their districts. We chose to go with our own consultant to do it.
So is there going to be like an input process for this, for how the district should be?
There is no input. It's scientific. It's set by state law. It has to be an equal number of people within X percent. There is no provision in state law for certain minority representation or anything like that. It's literally equal number of people.
But how you carve them out? Is there any criteria as to, is the number of people is the same for district, but how do you carve them out? Are there any criteria to follow some graphical boundaries or anything?
Well, yes, there are logical boundaries for like bodies of water, railroad tracks, and major roads, a canyon, but there are no carve-outs for demographics.
Hmm.
Now, you can choose to do it as a community, but that's dangerous stuff. That's how you get what's going on in Congress with their weird boundaries. So the city council approved new district boundaries, and because of the annexations of the past 5 years, picking up close to, 7,000 to 8,000 people south of 85 in the past 6 years, obviously the boundaries all shifted south. So District 1 went south of Johnson Ferry, District 2 went south of X, and it just kind of cheated south a little bit. Because when we became a city, we were about 49,000, now we're up to about 56,000.
Okay.
But for your all's purposes, it is a valid question and recommendation to consider representation, because there is a stark difference in the demographics between District 1 and District 4. And that would not be a unexpected recommendation for you all to consider.
Mhm. Okay.
Any other sections?
And the number of people. The number of people on your policy body is a community choice. For
city-
council members, 7. I mean, think of it this way: Doraville is a city maybe 1/10 the size of Brookhaven, and they have 7 council members. We have 4. I don't know what the right number is. I don't know how they came up with 4, 12 years ago when they created the charter. But is that the right number of representation? 12, 13, 14,000 per elected person.
So it's an arbitrary number then,
Yeah, it really is. And the decision of ward-based versus at-large.
Mhm.
We have ward-based, we have defined districts. When I was in Cincinnati, all 9 council members were at large. So nobody had to advocate for their particular district. They had to advocate for the entire city. That's a very rare thing, that the whole policy body would be at large. But then you have like DeKalb County, I think they have 7 districts plus 2 at large, or 5 districts and 2 at large. So they have a mixture, but you have a full range. They could all be district based, they could all be at large. You could have 4 representatives, or you could be like Chicago and have 137 aldermen. I mean, the community decides how many elected officials they have. I think a good way to look at it is, how many people does the commissioner or council member represent? And can you effectively represent 10,000 people, 20,000 people, 100,000 people? So a county commissioner in DeKalb County represents over 100,000 people.
Yeah. So is there any case to be made for having at-large seat in this council? Like, would that help with?
I don't know. I really don't.
Or it doesn't help because it's more representative of the whole body as opposed to a specific group? Would that be a more equitable thing to do, to have?
Well, in many cases, an at-large, I'm going out on a limb here, is a beauty contest. You don't know who's going to win. It's somebody it could be from anybody. And it's the top vote getter. So, like in Cincinnati, the top 9 people ended up on city council. You might have 27 candidates, but if you're number 10, you're out. So that's a community choice. Like I said, there are at-large even in the metro area. City Council of Atlanta has at-large people. I don't know the pros and cons. I've only worked in one or the other. I've never worked in a mixed one.
So when you say it's a community choice, you mean is the city council, or there's input from all parts of the community on this, or is there a resolution, something that?
A change in the number of council members or a change in at-large versus district would require a vote of the people. The council can't change that. So some areas of the charter require voter referendum changes, like term limits. number of districts. Other things don't, they can do themselves. But the number of council members would require a vote of the people.
Okay, thank you. So we're a little bit over 8 o'clock. Does anybody want to do any final comments about this? We can continue talking more about the charter in our base camp or at our next discussion.
Yeah, this has been so helpful. And I thank everyone in your comments, and I'm looking forward to Commissioner Corn's workshop. And so I'm dropping in the chat a survey. It's anonymous. We would love to be able to meet in person. Commissioner Corn, her workshop will take about an hour, and we are certainly able to do it online. But we wanted the opportunity, if it afforded itself, for us to meet face to face. Our next meeting is August 5th, and the location will be St. Martin's Episcopal School, our new High Point campus, right in Brookhaven. And so if you're able to and open to meeting face to face, if you could let us know that, it's a yes, no, maybe. And we'll just, if it doesn't work out that we meet face to face, we'll be online on August 5th. We don't want to put anyone out. We thought that this workshop in particular would be nice to be physically shoulder to shoulder or distant, but physically in the same room. So if you don't mind filling out that survey for us, that would be so very helpful. And of course, you'll hear from us way before that with our agenda, meeting location, and all that good stuff.
Tiffany, are you going to, based on the discussion or discussion in base camp, assign or ask for volunteers on various sections on the charter given our timeline?
Yes, Commissioner Pascal and we have to sit down and do that together.
Well, I'd be happy to help.
Thank you very much. All right. Do you want to close this out, Commissioner Pascal?
Yeah, so anyway, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Amy, for sharing your expertise. Thank you, Renee, for joining us, for the comments that you shared, Karen, for your comments. Christian, thank you for talking to us about the city charter. I think we're more than halfway done in this process. It's exciting work, and I wanted to ask briefly, has people been participating in civic dinners and other events? I knew there was one yesterday. Has anybody from our subcommittee been participating? How was that, Karen?
Well, it was good, but it was eye-opening in the sense that it reinforced kind of what we talked about earlier. The comment came up that about a perception among residents, not people who visited, but residents of Brookhaven, that again, this could have changed because of the pandemic, but a sense that when you get out and about and shop, that people don't want to care, and they don't want people to dig into why they don't care. And so they're kind of a little bit standoffish, and they just don't want people in their business. And that could be the reflection of the impact of the pandemic on us, and that we've all become a little bit more socially isolated. It could also be a reflection that we just, that 700 group that we included were not inclusive of all groups in the city. And, we don't have that information. So it's made me more cautious. I think it's made me keenly aware of the importance of making sure that we are very inclusive and deliberate. And the challenge with this, of course, is that, Kristen, to your point, it's very hard when you're reviewing things to see what's not there. And so when we look at these documents, these charters, and we're looking for what's not there in terms of fostering inclusion and equity, it's kind of hard to see it when it's missing. And so I think it takes, I'm finding anyway that it's helpful to kind of skim it a couple of times, skim key sections a couple of times, because it's just too easy to miss it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. So yeah, I encourage you to continue participating in not only the civic dinners, but there's some other pop-ups and other opportunities for community engagement in the month of July. So I'll be participating in a few. I hope to see some of you at some of these events.
I'm hosting one on July 7th.
Yes, and she sent yes, and Commissioner Russell sent an email inviting us to see if we wanted to participate. So thank you for hosting that. Well, anyway, good night. Thank you for joining us. And we'll see you at the meeting in 2 weeks, right? The big meeting, yes.
Yeah.
Later in July. Take care. Bye.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Good job.
Bye.
Everyone.